I grew up in a small offshoot movement from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, known as the Seventh-day Adventist Reform Movement, or sometimes referred to as the German Reform. And my father was sort of a pioneer in that movement. I grew up there. I became a pastor and an administrator within the Reform movement. But the Lord kept revealing more and more to me that things were just not quite right. That there were teachings in that group that did not square with the Bible and the spirit of prophecy. And so it was the year 1982. We found it necessary. My wife was also very active, working. We were in team ministry throughout the years. And she was head of our publishing work there in Denver, Colorado that we had. And we both together resigned every position there. I felt that my time of ministry, which amounted to about 20 years, was at an end. But by the grace of the Lord, I was invited back into the ministry of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. But in order to do so, I had to go through 9 months of working under a senior pastor up in Casper, Wyoming. And that's when we first met Tim and his wife, when he came, and we overlapped there for a couple of months before I went back to Andrews for one school year. And as I remember, we spent quite a bit of the time, not just in visits and so forth, but they had failed to winterize the campground the winter before. And we'd had an extremely cold winter, and so most of the pipes were frozen. And Tim and I played plumber, replacing water lines, drain lines, and so forth, as well as working together and pastoring a small Douglas, Wyoming church, which was about 50 miles from Casper. We felt a little bit bad because Tim and Bonnie had to live in a motel during the time we were still living in the parsonage until we moved back to Andrews. And I think you moved into the parsonage there, didn't you? All right, but what brings me here today? I want to just say, I just praise the Lord for the opportunity of being able to serve within the Seventh-day Adventist Church. For all these years, we served in a couple of districts in Colorado, and then transferred up to the Upper Columbia Conference, where we served in 2 districts, in Central Washington first, and then for 7.5 years in North Idaho. But that takes us back to my experience with Curtis. Curtis's parents, or actually his father and stepmother, were members in the Reform movement. And we knew them then, and his dad was working as a literature evangelist in New York City. And I was responsible for sort of supervising there, and I would have to go there every so often. I'd spend a whole week with them. We'd go out and do literature evangelism work in these tenements of Bronx and Harlem and various places there in New York, some very unsavory places. And I remember one time the whole family coming to visit. We were living in Ontario, Canada at that time, and they came up to visit. And on the way up, they saw some nice, fresh dandelion greens, and they thought, this is just great. We're going to bring a special gift to the Kramers. And so they brought a nice bouquet of dandelion greens, and when they drove into our driveway, our whole front lawn was dandelions. But the last time I saw Curtis, he was about 12 years old. So I would not have recognized him today. I won't say exactly what year that was, because I don't remember exactly the year, but it was when we were living in Canada, so it was a long while back. And I was just delighted when Pastor Tim called me and told me Curtis and his family were here and were planning to be baptized, and that he'd requested that I have that baptism because I worked so closely with his dad and stepmom back there in New York. And I haven't seen them for probably 30 years either. I don't think I would recognize them either. But I just praise the Lord for this opportunity. And if any of you are curious about the differences between the Reform group and the Seventh-day Adventist Church, you can obtain the book which I wrote from the Biblical Research Institute of the General Conference. It's published there. They distribute it. Simply called the Seventh-day Adventist Reform Movement. And that book is available. It's spread across the world, actually. But I'm so happy to be able to renew this acquaintance with you, Curtis, and with your children here. And it's going to be a great privilege to be able to participate in your baptism.
Amen.